Well, the first note I wrote for my homily this morning was joy of marriage. And so, what better way to celebrate this Sunday when we hear about how important marriage is and how Jesus obviously loved company and he loved parties. And so it's interesting that he starts off his career, because he came out of obscurity after 30 odd years, and he goes to a wedding. So what we know is that is very good. And your presence here in St. Theresa's church, I know you started coming here during the pandemic, and how wonderful it is that you've brought your third child to be baptized among us with your family and friends and with actually a family of deacons. They're much harder to recognize than priests, but they're here amongst us. The last year or two, certainly a year ago, it was pretty difficult to get married. Some couples, the dates might be arranged, the numbers for those attending the wedding shrunk, but some couples had hard time getting a wedding license because offices were closed, and so they were going as far afield as Fort Bend County and beyond to get a wedding license. But it shows how important it was to them and how important it was to get married in church. And the smallest wedding I had was myself, the bride and groom, and both parties, parent, mother and father. So very different ways of celebrating marriage, but still acknowledging how important it has been throughout hundreds and hundreds, over 1,000 years. And even before that, there was something similar to it. Small weddings can be so beautiful. So can royal weddings. They're a little more treacherous, though, royal weddings. So when Harry and Meghan got married in 18, 27 million people watched in the UK. That's kind of half the population. Only 29 million of you watched here. But hundreds of millions throughout the world. Let's hope his marriage is a different ending from his parents. The wedding certainly was, because normally footballers and their wives wouldn't have been invited. Tennis players, famous American tennis players, English Afro-American actors, television hosts, Elton and his partner. Whatever shape they take, the important and essential ingredient is love. And as I said a few minutes ago, it stresses for us how important the person of Jesus is in terms of he wants to share in our joys. And we're told in Romans that he also wants to share in our weakness. We celebrate this Sunday honoring marriage, honoring the fruits of marriage in Raphael. We celebrate it remembering as a country Martin Luther King. There's another couple that weren't treated quite so lovingly as royal couples. The man's name was Richard Long. His wife's name was Mildred Loving. Richard was white. Mildred Loving was black. In 1958, they left their home in Virginia, where interracial marriage was illegal. So they got married in Washington, D.C. He did return to their home state. Who doesn't want to go home? But they paid the price. They were imprisoned for being in love, choosing to get married. They were 25 years under a suspended sentence. And he filed a lawsuit against the governor of Virginia. They won their case, and this ended this discrimination and legalized interracial marriages throughout the US. And the number of interracial marriages subsequently have gone up for all between white people and many, many different races. I remember as a 14-year-old boy watching the news from America during the 1960s. The tragic sight of Martin Luther King slain, gunned down, doing God's work, dead on a hotel balcony. Later that year, Robert Kennedy, gunned down. People who work for justice. Certainly Martin Luther King did embody the best of our Catholic theology, teachings about social justice. And so even though Martin Luther is celebrated throughout this country, we still have a long way to go. And earlier this morning when I awoke, I suddenly thought of a young man in Britain. He came from South London, where I just purchased a home. 1993. 19 years old. Mother was a teacher. He was stabbed to death. The two men who stood trial were found innocent. But the powers that be had courage to say, they're as guilty as you know what. And so they changed the law that said just because you're found guilty, and it's obvious that later confirmation of how wrong that was, they changed the law. And so it took almost 10 years before they righted the wrong. The two men that were acquitted stood trial again. They were found guilty. And it exposed in Britain the terrible racial bias of our police. Mine, not yours. But I guess we do share that in common as well. Martin Luther King, he exuded the joy of Christ. Even though his mission, even though his life's work faced great challenges, great obstacles, obviously culminating in a violent death, we know that he believed in the one who was stronger than death. Let's end with words from Martin Luther. Martin Luther King. And as we walk We must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the hotels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. It cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Final sentence from that speech. We cannot walk alone. So hopefully we walk in unity with those of every color and creed and orientation, knowing that each and every one of us is created in the image of God. We were told in the first reading that each and every one of us is beloved by the God who created us. The God of love, in whom Raphael will be baptized shortly. Please like, subscribe, or comment below.